A mother falls to her knees in the street and crying tells her daughter there will be no Christmas. She was unjustly accused and lost the salary that would have guaranteed the gift for the girl. The millionaire witnesses the scene and is moved by every word he hears, and what he does changes the fate of the two women forever. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. On a cold December night, under a fine rain that seemed to weep alongside fate, Helena knelt in the street before a brightly lit mansion, embracing her little daughter Chiara and begging forgiveness for not being able to give her Christmas. The scene of sorrow was the culmination of a story of injustice, love and redemption that had begun long before that night. Hours earlier, Helena had woken up full of hope in her small apartment on the outskirts of the capital. The place was simple, but always kept with care and affection. The walls, though peeling in some places, displayed colorful drawings made by Chiara, who was only 6 years old. The girl slept peacefully in the apartment's only bedroom, while Helena prepared a simple coffee in the small kitchen. "Today's the day," she murmured to herself, as she looked at the calendar on the wall where she had circled the date in red pen, December 23rd. It was payday, which meant she could finally buy the only gift Chiara had been insistently asking for months, a rag doll in a red dress that she had seen in a shop window downtown. Helena had worked for 3 years as a maid in the Allianz mansion, a traditional family in the city's upscale neighborhood. Raphael Allianz, a respected 38-year-old widowed lawyer, was her direct employer, a fair and reserved man who had been raising his 8-year-old son, Theo, alone since his wife passed away due to complications during childbirth. "Mommy, is it time to go to work yet?" Chiara's sleepy little voice interrupted her thoughts. "Yes, my love. Mrs. Viola from 2B will stay with you today, as always. And today is a special day, remember? When I get back, I might have a surprise," Helena replied, helping her daughter get dressed. "The doll in the red dress?" The girl's eyes shone with expectation. "Let's see what Santa Claus has prepared," Helena said, changing the subject and kissing her daughter's forehead. "Now let's go, or I'll be late." After leaving Chiara with the neighbor, Helena walked to the bus stop. Throughout the journey to the elegant neighborhood where she worked, her heart was light, anticipating the joy she would bring to her daughter. The bus snaked through increasingly wide and tree-lined streets, leaving behind the humble neighborhood and arriving at the imposing mansions with their manicured gardens. When Helena arrived at the Allianz mansion, the usual silence greeted her. Raphael had already left for his office, and Theo was at the private school he attended. The only constant presence was that of Raphael's mother, Agnes Allianz, a 68-year-old woman who had moved into the mansion after her daughter-in-law's death, claiming she wanted to help her son raise his grandson. "Good morning, Mrs. Agnes," Helena greeted respectfully, hanging her simple coat on the coat rack near the service entrance. Agnes simply nodded without taking her eyes off the magazine she was reading in the living room. "There are breakfast dishes to wash, and I want you to clean the dining room especially well today. We'll have guests this afternoon." "Yes, ma'am," Helena replied, heading towards the kitchen. What Helena didn't know was that Agnes was watching her with growing resentment. The old woman couldn't stand the way her grandson, Theo, followed Helena around the house, telling her stories from school and asking her opinion on drawings and homework. Nor did she like seeing how her own son, Raphael, seemed more relaxed and smiling when he talked to the maid, on the rare occasions when he was home during the day. "He's trying to take her place," Agnes often murmured to herself, referring to her deceased daughter-in-law. The idea that Helena might one day awaken Raphael's romantic interest gnawed at her from the inside, fueling a morbid jealousy and an irrational fear of being forgotten or replaced. That morning, while Helena cleaned the dining room humming softly, Agnes put into action a plan she had been developing for days. Discreetly, she took 3 expensive crystal Christmas ornaments that decorated the large tree in the living room and hid them in her own room inside a tissue box. Then she went to the kitchen and, making sure Helena was busy in another room, threw away the turkey they had bought for Christmas dinner. Around 3 in the afternoon, Agnes received 2 friends for tea, Rose Limon and Olivia Muller, ladies of the same age and social circle, known for their sharp tongues and harsh judgments. "Helena," Agnes called out loudly, after the 3 of them were already settled in the living room with fine china cups in their hands. "Bring more of those shortbread cookies, please." Helena appeared promptly, carrying a tray of biscuits. As she bent down to serve the ladies, Agnes let out a theatrical exclamation. "Oh my God! Rose, are you seeing what I'm seeing? The crystal ornaments that belonged to my grandmother, they've disappeared from the tree." Helena looked at the Christmas tree in confusion, now noticing the empty spaces between the ornaments. "Mrs. Agnes, they were there this morning when I cleaned the room," she began to say, but was interrupted. "Olivia, you remember them, don't you? They were 3 crystal angels, rare pieces that came from Europe," Agnes continued, completely ignoring Helena's words. "Of course I remember, darling. Beautiful pieces of inestimable value, not only financially, but sentimentally," Olivia replied, casting an accusing glance at Helena. "And the turkey for Christmas dinner also disappeared from the refrigerator. I checked it myself earlier," added Agnes, with an expression of feigned bewilderment. "It's just the 3 of us in the house today." Helena's face paled as she understood the implicit accusation. "Mrs. Agnes, I would never take something that doesn't belong to me. You can search my things, my bag." "Oh, that wouldn't be necessary," Rose interjected condescendingly. "The items have probably already been relocated." The 3 ladies exchanged meaningful glances, while Helena stood there, paralyzed by the injustice of the situation. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt her face burn with shame and indignation. "Helena," Agnes finally said, with feigned compassion in her voice, "out of respect for the Christmas spirit and your years of service, I will not fire you today. However, as punishment and compensation for the lost items, I will be forced to withhold your salary for this month." It was as if the ground had opened up beneath Helena's feet. All her planning, the silent promise made to her daughter, the small joy she had cultivated for months, everything crumbled in an instant because of a cruel lie. "But, Mom, I need this money. My daughter, her Christmas." Helena's voice faltered, and tears began to well up in her eyes. "Perhaps this will teach you to value the job you have and not to take what doesn't belong to you," Agnes replied coldly. "Now you may leave. We're finished for today." With dignity, even though she felt devastated inside, Helena left the room. She grabbed her purse and coat and left the mansion without looking back, while the 3 ladies continued their tea as if nothing had happened. Outside, the rain began to fall fine and cold, as if the sky shared her pain. Helena walked automatically to the bus stop, her mind a whirlwind of desperate thoughts. How would she explain to Chiara that there would be no Christmas present? How would they get through the festive season without even having money for a simple dinner? When she got off at the stop near her apartment, she saw Chiara waiting for her on the sidewalk, sheltered from the rain by the small awning of the corner grocery store. The girl smiled and ran to meet her, her eyes shining with expectation. "Mom, did you bring the surprise? Can we go see Santa Claus in the park today?" It was at that moment that Helena broke down. Kneeling on the wet sidewalk, she hugged her daughter tightly and let the tears flow freely. "Forgive me, my love," she sobbed. "Mommy won't be able to give you Christmas this year." It was at that exact moment that Raphael Allianz parked his imported car nearby. He was returning home early from the office as he needed to prepare some documents at home before an important hearing the following day. As he got out of the vehicle, he was surprised by the scene unfolding a few meters away. His maid, Helena, kneeling on the wet sidewalk, hugging a little girl, both crying in the light rain. Raphael hesitated for a moment, uncomfortable with the intimacy of the scene. He thought about continuing on his way and pretending he hadn't seen anything, but something in Helena's silent despair deeply moved him. He cautiously approached, opening his umbrella over the 2 of them. "Helena, is everything all right?" he asked, although it was obvious that it wasn't. Helena lifted her face, surprised and embarrassed. She quickly tried to dry her tears with the back of her hands, getting up from the wet floor. "Dr. Raphael, I'm sorry about my condition," she stammered, pulling Chiara close to her, as if to protect her. "Who are you, sir?" asked little Chiara, looking at Raphael curiously through her tears. "This is Dr. Raphael, my boss," Helena explained, trying to compose herself. Raphael crouched down to be at the girl's height. "And you must be Chiara. Your mother always talks about you." The girl nodded, still sad, but a little less tearful at the elegant stranger's interest. "Mom said there won't be Santa Claus this year," Chiara revealed with the sincerity typical of children. "She said she can't give me Christmas." Raphael looked questioningly at Helena, who lowered her eyes. embarrassed. Something was wrong, very wrong. He had known Helena for 3 years and knew she was an exemplary, dedicated and honest employee. Seeing her in that state with her daughter in the middle of the rain was completely out of the ordinary. "Why don't we talk somewhere warmer and drier?" he suggested, indicating his car. "I can give you a ride home and we can talk on the way." Helena hesitated. She had never mixed her personal life with work. Raphael knew she had a daughter, but he had never brought her to the mansion, nor had he talked much about his life outside of it. However, the rain was getting heavier, Chiara was shivering with cold, and she didn't have the strength to refuse the kindness. In the comfort of the luxurious car, Raphael drove, following Helena's directions, to the modest housing complex where she lived. Chiara, in the back seat, gazed in wonder at the interior of the vehicle, momentarily distracted from her sadness. "What happened, Helena?" Raphael asked quietly as he drove. "You left early today. My mother said there was a family emergency." Helena felt a new wave of anger and sadness. Another lie from Agnes. "There was no emergency at all," she replied firmly, despite the tears threatening to return. "Your mother accused me of stealing Christmas decorations and the turkey from the Christmas dinner in front of her friends, and as punishment, she withheld my salary for the month." Raphael braked sharply, almost causing an accident. "What?" he exclaimed, incredulous. "My mother did that, but that's absurd. I would never take anything that doesn't belong to me, Dr. Raphael. You've known me for 3 years, said Helena, her voice now stronger, driven by indignation. But your mother has already decided my fate, and without my salary, I can't give my daughter the only gift she's asked for all year. I can't even buy food for our Christmas dinner." Raphael remained silent for a few moments, processing the information. He knew his mother's difficult temperament, but he had never imagined she was capable of such a cruel injustice. "We'll sort this out," he finally said, resuming control. "I'll take them home, and then I'll talk to my mother. If what you say is true—" "It's the truth," Helena interrupted, with a dignity that impressed Raphael. "I have no reason to lie." When they arrived at the small apartment, Raphael insisted on going upstairs with them. The contrast between the mansion where he worked and Helena's modest home was striking, but the lawyer noticed with surprise that despite its simplicity, the place conveyed more warmth and coziness than his own house. "Chiara, why don't you go change out of those wet clothes?" Helena suggested after opening the door. "There are cookies in the tin in the kitchen. You can grab some." The girl obeyed, glancing curiously at Raphael one last time before disappearing into the small room. "She looks like you," Raphael commented, trying to ease the tension. "He has his father's eyes," Helena replied automatically. Then, as if regretting the comment, she changed the subject. "Dr. Raphael, I appreciate your concern, but I don't want to cause any trouble. Perhaps it would be best if I looked for another job after the holidays." "Don't even think about it," Raphael replied firmly. "If there was an injustice, we'll right it. Come back to the mansion with me now. We'll clear all this up." "But Chiara, she's coming with us. Theo will love meeting her, and maybe seeing a child will help my mother remember what the Christmas spirit means." After some initial resistance, Helena agreed. She gathered a few things for Chiara in a small backpack, explained to her daughter that they were going to visit the house where she worked, and the three of them left in Raphael's car. At the Allianz mansion, Agnes was in the living room, still with her friends, when the front door opened. Her welcoming smile towards her son froze when she saw who was with him. "Raphael, what does this mean?" he asked, standing up indignantly. "Why did you bring the maid back? And who is this child?" Raphael ignored his mother's questions, turning to the visitors with polite coldness. "Ladies, I'm afraid you'll have to leave. We have an urgent family matter to discuss." Rose and Olivia exchanged awkward but curious glances at how things were unfolding. They gathered their bags and left quickly, casting speculative glances at Helena and Chiara. As soon as the door closed behind the visitors, Raphael faced his mother. "Mom, Helena told me a very disturbing story about accusations of theft and withholding wages. I want to know exactly what happened here today." Agnes paled slightly, but maintained her composure. "That woman took away valuable ornaments and our Christmas turkey. I have every right to withhold her payment as compensation." Helena stepped forward, still holding Chiara's hand. "Mrs. Agnes, I never took anything from this house. You know that." "How dare you call me a liar in my own house?" exclaimed Agnes, raising her voice. Chiara cowered behind her mother, frightened by the older woman's aggressive tone. Raphael noticed the child's fear and lowered his voice, trying to calm things down. "Mum, let's be rational. Helena has worked with us for 3 years without ever giving us any reason to suspect anything. Why would she start stealing now? And right before Christmas?" Agnes hesitated, realizing that her son was unwilling to accept her version without question. At that moment, Theo came down the stairs, drawn by the raised voices. "Dad? What's going on?" asked the boy, immediately noticing Helena and the small stranger who was partially hiding behind her. "Theo, this is Chiara, Helena's daughter," Raphael introduced, relieved by the interruption. "Why don't you take her to see her toys while the adults talk?" Theo smiled shyly at the girl. "Want to see my electric train? I just finished setting up the new track." Chiara looked at her mother, seeking approval. Helena nodded with a small encouraging smile, and the 2 children went upstairs, leaving the adults in the room in a tense silence. "Now," said Raphael as soon as the children disappeared upstairs, "we're going to find out the truth. I'll search the whole house if I have to, but I want to know what really happened to those supposedly stolen items." Agnes's face flushed red with indignation. "You're doubting me, your own blood, because of this maid." "I'm seeking the truth, Mom," Raphael replied firmly, "and I hope, for everyone's sake, that this truth isn't what I'm beginning to suspect." Meanwhile, upstairs, Theo proudly showed his toy collection to Chiara. The little girl watched everything with wide eyes, having never seen so many toys together outside of shop windows. "And this is my favorite," said Theo, showing an electric train that ran on an elaborate track set up in a corner of the room. "My dad gave it to me for my last birthday." "It's beautiful," murmured Chiara, watching the little train move with fascinated eyes. "Do you have many toys?" Theo asked innocently. Chiara shook her head. "Not that many, but I really wanted a doll. One with a red dress that they have at the store near our house. Mum said Santa Claus was going to bring one, but now she says there won't be a Santa Claus this year." Theo frowned, confused. "What do you mean there won't be a Santa Claus? He comes to every house at Christmas." "Mum said he won't be able to come to our house," Chiara replied sadly. "She was crying in the street. That's when her father found us." The boy was thoughtful for a moment. Then, as if seized by a sudden idea, he ran to his closet and rummaged through some boxes. He returned with something hidden behind his back. "Wait here," he said, running out of the room. Downstairs, the heated argument between Raphael, Helena, and Agnes continued, when Theo appeared in the room, interrupting the conversation. "Grandma," he called, approaching Agnes with something in his hands. "Why did you hide the crystal angels in your room? I found them in your tissue box." A deathly silence fell over the room as Agnes visibly paled, staring at the 3 crystal ornaments her grandson was holding. The silence that filled the room seemed solid enough to be broken. Agnes opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water, while her face alternated between pale white and intense red. Raphael stared intently at the ornaments in his son's small hands, then at his mother, an expression of disbelief slowly transforming into something harder. Disappointment. "Theo," she finally said, her voice controlled, "where exactly did you find those ornaments?" "In Grandma's tissue box on the nightstand next to her bed," the boy replied innocently. "I was looking for my remote-controlled car that went missing, and I saw something shiny inside the box when I passed by her room." Helena remained silent, her eyes downcast, but her hands trembled slightly at her sides. The humiliation she had suffered hours before now gave way to a strange feeling of emptiness. There was no satisfaction in discovering the truth, only sadness for the gratuitous cruelty she had been subjected to. "Mom." Raphael's voice was low, almost a whisper, but loaded with an intensity that made Agnes shrink back. "What does this mean?" Agnes finally found her voice, a mixture of indignation and despair. "It's not what it looks like, Raphael. I just put the ornaments away to protect them. I knew they weren't safe on the tree with certain people in the house." "Certain people?" Raphael repeated, his voice growing louder. "Are you referring to Helena? The same Helena you accused of theft today? The same Helena you humiliated in front of her friends? The same Helena whose salary you withheld, preventing her from giving her daughter a Christmas present?" Agnes took a step back, visibly shaken by her son's tone. She had never seen him so furious. not even in the worst moments after his wife's death. Raphael, you don't understand. This woman, she's taking advantage of the situation. She's trying to infiltrate our family. I see how Theo follows her around the house, how he treats her almost like a... Like what, Mum? Raphael interrupted, understanding beginning to form on his face. Like a mother? Is that what bothers you? That Theo might become fond of Helena, that I might treat her with respect and consideration? Agnes looked away, unable to face the accusation in her son's eyes. Her silence was more revealing than any confession. And the turkey? Raphael asked after a moment. Did you hide it too? I threw it away, Agnes admitted quietly. It was broken. We intended to buy another one. Lies! The word escaped Helena's lips before she could stop it. Everyone turned to her, surprised by the outburst. I checked the turkey myself this morning when I was cleaning the kitchen. It was perfectly preserved. Raphael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and disbelief. Theo, please go back upstairs with Chiara. The adults still need to talk. The boy hesitated, confused by the tension in the air, but obeyed, climbing the stairs with the ornament still in his hands. When his footsteps disappeared on the upper floor, Raphael turned to his mother. Why? He asked simply. Why do something so cruel, so petty? Agnes seemed to wither before her son's eyes, as if all air of superiority and indignation had been drained from her. She sank into the nearest sofa, suddenly appearing much older and frailer. Don't you see how she looks at you? Agnes murmured. How she smiles when you arrive? How she always has a kind word, a thoughtful gesture. She's trying to take Anna's place. She's trying to seduce you to enter our lives through the back door. Raphael closed his eyes for a moment, searching for patience. Mom, Anna passed away 8 years ago, and Helena is a dedicated employee who never ever gave any indication of what you're implying. What you did today wasn't just unfair, it was cruel and calculated. Turning to Helena, who remained motionless in the same place, Raphael continued, Helena, I have no words to express my embarrassment and shame for what happened today. You deserve much more than an apology, but that's where I'll begin. I am deeply sorry for what my mother did. Helena nodded slightly, still uncomfortable with the whole situation. Dr. Raphael, I understand that family is complicated. I don't want to cause more problems. Perhaps it would be better if I simply... No, Raphael interrupted firmly. You're not going anywhere. What's going to happen now is this. First, I'm going to pay you your full salary, plus compensation for the trouble caused. But, doctor, it's not necessary. Secondly, Raphael continued, ignoring the interruption, I would like you and Chiara to spend Christmas with us. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and it would be an honor to have you as our guests, not as employees, but as friends. Agnes jumped up. Raphael, you can't be serious. Inviting the maid to our Christmas dinner. What will people think? What will your Aunt Fiona say when she finds out? I don't care what my aunt or anyone else thinks, Raphael replied coldly. And if you can't see the seriousness of what you did today, maybe it's best to spend Christmas at her house. The ultimatum hung in the air like a dark cloud. Agnes opened her mouth to protest again, but something in her son's gaze made her reconsider. Slowly, she sat back down, her shoulders slumped in a defeated posture. Helena, said Raphael, turning to the woman who was still stunned by the events. Please reconsider my invitation. I know it doesn't make up for what happened, but I would very much like you and your daughter to share the date with us. Helena hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, to maintain her dignity and distance, to return to her small apartment and try to salvage what she could of Christmas for Chiara. But another part, the one that thought about her daughter's happiness, about the possibility of giving her at least one magical Christmas night, made her consider the invitation. I'll think about it, Dr. Raphael, she finally replied. But now, if you don't mind, I need to take Chiara home. It's getting late, and she needs to have dinner and rest. Raphael nodded understandingly. Of course. I'll take them back. But first, he went to a drawer in the desk near the window, from which he took out an envelope. Your salary, as promised. Helena reluctantly accepted the envelope. Thank you, Doctor. Raphael, he corrected with a small smile, I think after all this we can skip the formalities, can't we? A slight blush colored Helena's cheeks, and she nodded without answering, avoiding the furious look Agnes was giving her. I'll call the children, said Raphael, heading towards the stairs. When they were alone in the room, Agnes approached Helena, her posture rigid and her face contorted. "Don't think it's over," she hissed softly. "My son may be blind now, but I know women like you, opportunists who take advantage of lonely men. It won't work." Helena met the older woman's gaze without flinching. "You're mistaken about me, Mrs. Agnes. I never wanted anything more than to do my job with dignity and respect, and now all I want is to give my daughter a decent Christmas." "They all say that," Agnes retorted disdainfully, "but deep down, they all want the same thing: financial security, status, a man like my son to solve their problems. It's a shame he still loves Anna, the only woman who truly deserved his heart." The words hit Helena like a slap, not because of the accusation itself, but because of the bitterness and loneliness they revealed. Suddenly, she understood that before her stood not only a rich and malicious woman, but a mother who feared losing her only son, a woman who had grown old, clinging to memories of the past, like someone clinging to a life raft in the middle of the ocean. "Mrs. Agnes," said Helena, calmer now, "I am so sorry for your loss, truly. I know what it's like to lose someone we love, but grief doesn't justify hurting others, especially innocent people, like your granddaughter." Before Agnes could answer, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Raphael was coming down with the two children, Chiara holding Theo's hand tightly, both smiling as if they were old friends. "Look, Mommy," exclaimed Chiara, showing something in her hands. "Theo gave me an early Christmas present." It was a small toy train, a miniature of the set the boy cherished so much. Helena looked questioningly at Raphael, concerned about the appropriateness of the gift. "Theo insisted," Raphael explained with a smile. "He said he has lots of toys and wanted to share them with his new friend." "That's really very kind, but we can't accept," Helena began, but Theo interrupted her. "Please, let her keep the toy train. I hardly ever play with it anymore, and Chiara liked it so much." Helena looked at the boy's pleading face, then at her daughter, whose eyes shone with joy at the unexpected gift, and finally at Raphael, who watched her with an expression difficult to decipher. "All right," he conceded, "but only if your father agrees." "Of course I agree," Raphael replied promptly, "and I hope this is just the first of many happy moments between our families." Agnes watched the scene from the dining room doorway, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes half closed, calculating her next move. The battle was lost, but the war, she decided, had only just begun. While Raphael retrieved his coat to take Helena and Chiara back home, the housekeeper realized that something had irrevocably changed that day. A door that had always been closed between distinct worlds now opened, revealing an uncertain and potentially dangerous path. But looking at her daughter, who hugged the small train as if it were the most precious treasure in the world, Helena knew she couldn't turn back. For Chiara's sake, she would face any battle that came next. The following morning dawned clear and cold, with an almost impossibly blue sky. Helena woke early as usual, but remained in bed for a few minutes contemplating the events of the previous day. The envelope with the money rested on the small dresser, along with a card that Raphael had written with his address and personal phone number, in case she needed anything. Chiara was still asleep, the small toy train pressed against her chest. Helena smiled at seeing her daughter so peaceful, oblivious to the complications of the adult world. She got up silently and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. While the water boiled, her thoughts returned to Raphael's invitation. Spending Christmas Eve at the Allianz mansion. The idea still seemed absurd, but the sparkle in Chiara's eyes when Theo had invited her to see the large illuminated Christmas tree had been irresistible. "Let's accept it," Helena decided, speaking to herself. "Just for Chiara, just for tonight." Later, after breakfast, Helena took her daughter shopping. With the money she had recovered, she was finally able to buy the much-desired doll in the red dress. Chiara's face when she saw the gift being wrapped in the store was worth every moment of humiliation she had suffered. "It's for Christmas, you can't open it yet," Helena explained, putting the package back in the bag. "I know, Mom. You have to wait for Santa to bring it," Chiara replied seriously, making Helena smile at her daughter's innocence. Then they bought ingredients for an apple pie. "We can't go empty-handed," Helena explained, as they chose the reddest and firmest apples. "You always bring something when you're invited to dinner." In the small apartment, as they prepared the pie together, Helena tried to organize her confused feelings. There was something in Raphael's gentleness, in the way his eyes reflected a deep understanding when he looked at her, that disturbed and attracted her at the same time. But there was also Agnes, with her palpable hatred and veiled threats. And there was her own promise made years before never to depend on a man again. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Raphael. "I just wanted to confirm that you'll be coming tonight," he said, his voice conveying a barely disguised expectation. "Yes, we will," Helena replied, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "We're making a pie to take with us." "There was no need to worry about that," said Raphael. "I insist," Helena insisted. There was a brief pause before Raphael continued. "Helena, about yesterday. I want you to know that I spoke at length with my mother. She understands the seriousness of what she did and promises to behave appropriately tonight. There will be no more accusations or disrespect." Helena doubted the sincerity of Agnes's repentance, but appreciated Raphael's effort to ensure a peaceful night. "Thank you. We will behave appropriately as well," she replied with a hint of irony that made Raphael laugh on the other end of the line. "I never doubted it," he said. "Oh, and Helena? Theo won't stop talking about Chiara. I think he's finally found a friend." When they hung up, Helena felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Raphael picked up Helena and Chiara as agreed. The girl looked especially beautiful in her best dress, her hair carefully combed and tied back with colorful ribbons. Helena had also dressed up, wearing the only nice dress she owned, a simple but elegant navy blue design. The Allianz mansion was magnificently decorated for Christmas, with twinkling lights all over the facade, and a large natural pine tree visible through the wide living room windows. Chiara sighed in admiration as they got out of the car. "It looks like a princess castle at Christmas," murmured the little girl, making Raphael smile. "Welcome to our humble abode," he said with exaggerated formality, making a small bow that drew laughter from Chiara. Upon entering, they were greeted by an exuberant Theo who could barely contain his excitement. "You actually came!" he exclaimed, pulling Chiara by the hand. "Come see the tree. We hung more lights today." Agnes was in the room, impeccably dressed and with a fixed smile that didn't reach her eyes. She stood up when the group entered, her stiff posture revealing her discomfort. "Good evening, Helena." "Good evening, little one," she greeted with forced politeness. "Welcome to our home." "Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Agnes," Helena replied with equal formality, handing her the carefully wrapped pie. "We made an apple pie for dessert." Agnes accepted the gift with a nod, immediately passing it to the cook, who appeared at the door. "Very kind of you. Please make yourselves at home." The cook, a middle-aged woman named Rose, smiled warmly at Helena. They knew each other well, having worked side by side at larger events in the mansion. Rose discreetly winked at Helena, a gesture that said, "I'm on your side," before disappearing into the kitchen with the pie. Dinner was served in the large dining room with its long oak table covered in a white linen tablecloth and decorated with arrangements of red flowers and candles. The food was plentiful and delicious. Roast turkey, rice with almonds, scalloped potatoes, steamed vegetables, and various types of salad. Chiara stared at everything with wide eyes, never having seen so much food gathered on a single table. Sitting next to Theo, she attentively watched how he used the different utensils, trying to imitate him. The conversation during dinner flowed surprisingly well, centered mainly on the children and neutral topics such as recent films and interesting places to visit in the city. Raphael made a point of including Helena in every discussion, asking her opinion and listening attentively to her answers, much to the evident displeasure of Agnes, who contributed with monosyllables and tense smiles. "And you, Chiara, are you excited for Santa Claus?" Raphael asked at one point, leaning towards the girl. Chiara nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mum said he'll be able to come to our house now." "And what did you ask him for?" Raphael continued, exchanging a knowing look with Helena. "A doll in a red dress," Chiara replied. "And I also asked that my mommy wouldn't be sad anymore." A momentary silence fell over the table. Helena felt her face grow hot and fixed her gaze on the plate, moved by the simplicity and depth of her daughter's wish. "I'm sure Santa Claus will grant both wishes," Raphael said gently. "He has a special talent for making Mom smile at Christmas." After dinner, while Rose served Helena's apple pie, which received sincere praise from everyone, including a reluctant nod from Agnes, Theo suggested that the children sing some Christmas carols they had learned at school. The impromptu children's concert brought tears to Helena's eyes. Seeing her daughter, normally so shy, singing joyfully alongside her new friend, in a house that until yesterday had only been her workplace, seemed like a small Christmas miracle. When the children finished, they were rewarded with enthusiastic applause. Even Agnes seemed to relax a little, a genuine smile softening her features as she watched her grandson. "Now, how about we each open a present?" Raphael suggested. "It's a tradition in our family to open a present on Christmas Eve." "But we didn't bring any presents," Helena whispered, embarrassed. "Don't worry about it," Raphael replied softly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Your presence here tonight is gift enough." The comment, delivered with such sincerity, made Helena feel a warmth spread through her chest again. There was something in Raphael's eyes, a vulnerability mixed with admiration, that made her want to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, this night was the beginning of something new and not just an interlude of kindness. The children received their gifts with exclamations of joy. For Theo, a set of toy cars that he had wanted for months. To Helena and Chiara's surprise, Raphael also had a gift for the girl, a delicate music box with a ballerina that spun to the tune of Silent Night. "How did I know she would love this?" Helena asked, watching the fascination on her daughter's face as the ballerina twirled. "A guess," Raphael replied, his eyes meeting hers. "Or perhaps I noticed when you mentioned once that you danced ballet as a child." Helena didn't remember sharing this detail of her past with him, and she was touched to realize that he had kept this information to himself. When the clock in the room struck 10, Helena realized it was time to go. Chiara was already showing signs of tiredness, although she struggled to keep her eyes open, excited by her new friendship and the magic of the place. "We need to go," Helena announced, standing up. "We've already taken advantage of your hospitality too much." "Not at all," Raphael protested. "The night is still young." "But Santa Claus won't come if we're not asleep," Chiara interjected with concern, making the adults smile. "Miss Chiara is right," Raphael agreed. "We can't risk missing Santa's visit. I'll take them home." Agnes, who had remained relatively quiet for most of the night, suddenly spoke up. "Raphael, before you leave, could you help me with that heavy box in my room? I can't move it by myself." Raphael seemed surprised by the request, but nodded. "Of course, Mum. Helena, just give me a minute. I'll be right back to take them." As Raphael went upstairs with Agnes, Helena helped Chiara put on her coat. Theo watched with obvious disappointment. "Do you really have to go?" the boy asked. "It was the best Christmas ever." "It's not even really Christmas yet," Chiara replied. "It's tomorrow." "Then you should come back tomorrow," exclaimed Theo, his eyes shining with the idea. Helena smiled, but before she could answer, she heard raised voices upstairs. She couldn't make out the words, but Agnes's tone was clearly accusatory, while Raphael seemed to be defending himself against some accusation. The light and festive atmosphere of the evening quickly dissipated, replaced by a palpable tension that made Helena wish she were as far away as possible from that house and the conflicts of its inhabitants. She was about to suggest that perhaps they could call a taxi when Raphael reappeared on the stairs, his face tense but determined. "Sorry for the delay," he said, trying to regain his composure. "Shall we go?" On the silent drive to Helena's apartment, Raphael seemed lost in thought, responding with monosyllables to Helena's few attempts at conversation. Chiara had fallen asleep in the back seat, lulled by the car's movement, the music box held firmly between her small hands. Upon arriving, Raphael insisted on carrying Chiara to the apartment. The girl didn't wake up even when Raphael gently placed her in bed, adjusting the blankets around her with a tenderness that made Helena's heart ache. "Thank you for the evening," Helena said as they returned to the small room. "It meant a lot to Chiara." "And for me," Raphael replied, his intense gaze meeting hers. "Helena, there's something I need to tell you." The serious tone in his voice made Helena hold her breath, a mixture of anxiety and expectation enveloping her like a wave. "What happened upstairs? Between you and your mother?" Helena asked, unable to contain her curiosity. The tension on Raphael's face was evident, even as he tried to maintain his composure. Raphael let out a tired sigh and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Helena had already identified as a sign of his discomfort. For a moment he seemed to hesitate, as if weighing to what extent he should share his family problems with her. "My mother thinks I'm betraying Anna's memory by getting close to you and Chiara," she finally said. "She said I'm using Christmas as an excuse to start something that shouldn't exist." Helena felt her face flush. So it wasn't just Agnes's paranoia. Raphael really was showing interest that went beyond the employer-employee relationship. The revelation left her momentarily speechless. "I understand," he finally murmured. "I'm sorry for causing trouble between you two." "You didn't cause any problem," Raphael replied firmly. "The problem is with my mother, who can't accept that life goes on, that I have the right to move on." Moving forward, the words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning and possibilities that Helena hadn't allowed herself to consider until that moment. "Raphael, she began, but was interrupted when he took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Don't say anything now," he pleaded, his voice low and intense. "Just let me say what I've been holding back for months. Helena, since you came into our lives, something has changed. The house has become lighter, more alive. Theo smiles more, talks more, and I found myself eagerly awaiting the moments when we cross paths, the little conversations in the kitchen, the discreet smiles we exchange when something funny happens." Helena felt her heart race. Part of her wanted to retreat, to protect herself from the vulnerability his words awakened, but another part, the one that had been dormant for so long, seemed to awaken, yearning for that unexpected connection. "Your place isn't cleaning our house," Raphael continued. "You're intelligent, kind, strong. You deserve so much more than that. And I'd like to get to know you better, Helena. Not as my employee, but as the extraordinary woman you are." The silence that followed seemed to amplify the sound of hearts beating fast. Helena felt torn between the desire to surrender to the moment and the fear of all the complications it would bring. "Raphael, you're my boss," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "There's a young daughter involved. Her mother clearly hates me, and I promised myself I would never again depend on a man for anything." "I'm not offering dependency," he replied, taking her hands in his. "I'm offering partnership. And as for the other complications, we can face them together, one step at a time." His touch was warm and comforting, awakening sensations Helena thought she had forgotten. For a fleeting moment she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to have someone by her side again, someone she could trust, with whom she could share the joys and burdens of life. "I need time," she said finally, reluctant to remove her hands from his, but knowing she needed to keep her thoughts clear. "All of this is very sudden, and I need to think about Chiara first." Raphael nodded understandingly. "Of course. Time is something I can give. I only ask that you don't close the door on that possibility." "I'm not going to close," Helena promised, surprising herself with the sincerity of her statement. Raphael smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes in a way that made Helena's stomach churn. "Then I'll wait as long as it takes." He leaned down and, with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of his previous words, placed a soft kiss on Helena's cheek. "Merry Christmas, Helena," he murmured close to her ear. "Merry Christmas, Raphael," she replied, her skin still tingling where his lips had touched. When the door closed behind him, Helena remained motionless for a few moments, as if in a dream from which she feared waking. The small room suddenly seemed different, as if the words and feelings exchanged had physically altered the surrounding environment. Slowly, she made her way to the small cupboard where she had hidden Chiara's present. She took out the doll in the red dress and carefully placed it under the small plastic Christmas tree they had decorated together days before. Next to it, she positioned the music box that Raphael had given Chiara, making sure that these would be the first things her daughter would see when she woke up. Lying in her bed long afterward, Helena still relived every moment of the night, the elegant dinner, the Christmas carols, the unexpected generosity, and finally, Raphael's declaration. Everything seemed surreal, like one of those Christmas stories on television, where miracles happened and lives were transformed by the spirit of the holiday. "But real life isn't a fairy tale," she murmured to herself in the darkness of the room, "and Agnes isn't going to give up so easily. With that unsettling thought, Helena finally fell asleep, only to be awakened a few hours later by Kiara's joyful cries, who had discovered the presents under the small tree. Christmas passed like a happy dream for Kiara. The little girl alternated between playing with her new doll and making the ballerina in her music box spin endlessly. Helena watched her daughter's happiness with a full heart, grateful to be able to provide her with this joy, even if indirectly. On the morning of the 26th, while preparing breakfast, Helena was surprised by the doorbell. Upon opening the door, she found Theo and Raphael, both carrying packages wrapped in colorful paper. "Surprise!" exclaimed Theo, jumping with excitement. "We brought more presents for the day after Christmas." Helena looked questioningly at Raphael, who shrugged with a shy smile. Theo insisted we needed to continue the celebration. "I hope you don't think we're being too intrusive showing up like this unannounced." "Of course not," Helena replied, opening the door wider for them to enter. "Kiara will be ecstatic to see you. She hasn't stopped talking about Christmas Eve since she woke up yesterday." As expected, Kiara was delighted with the surprise visit. Soon the two children were sitting on the living room rug, excitedly exchanging stories while unwrapping their new gifts, a board game to play together and an illustrated book for Kiara. "Coffee," Helena offered, leading Raphael to the small kitchen. "I'd love to," he replied, observing the welcoming surroundings with genuine interest. "Your apartment is very nice. It has your personality in every corner." Helena smiled, pouring the coffee into her finest cups, which, she knew, would seem simple compared to the fine china of the Allianz mansion. "How was your Christmas?" she asked, sitting down at the small table across from him. "Quiet," Raphael replied. "Mom stayed in her room most of the day, only coming out for lunch. Theo missed Kiara, asking every 5 minutes when he could see her again." "And you?" The question escaped before Helena could stop it. "What did you miss?" Raphael's eyes met hers with an intensity that made her stomach churn again. "About you," he replied simply. "About your smile, your voice, your presence that seems to light up any room." Helena lowered her gaze to her cup, feeling her face burn. She wasn't used to receiving such direct, sincere compliments. "Raphael, about our conversation the day before yesterday. I've thought a lot about it and, he encouraged when she hesitated. "And I'm afraid," Helena confessed, "afraid of what her mother might do, afraid of what people will say, afraid of getting hurt again, afraid of Kiara getting hurt. There are too many fears to ignore." Raphael reached across the table, lightly touching hers. "Fears are natural, Helena. I have mine too, but we can't let them define our lives or our choices, not when there's so much at stake." His touch sent shivers down her arm, and Helena wondered how such a simple gesture could evoke so many sensations. "So what are you suggesting? That I simply ignore all obstacles and throw myself headlong into this?" "No," Raphael replied, gently squeezing her hand. "I suggest we face these obstacles together, one at a time, starting with the most immediate. I don't think you should continue working as a maid in my house." Helena recoiled immediately, withdrawing her hand. "So that's it? You're firing me already?" Raphael shook his head, a patient smile on his lips. "I'm not firing you, Helena. I'm offering you a promotion. I need someone to manage the house, supervising the team I'll hire to replace you in the heavier tasks. Someone I completely trust to take care of my home and my son. A housekeeper, with a salary appropriate to the role and more flexible hours." Helena blinked, surprised by the unexpected proposal. "A governess?" "Exactly," Raphael confirmed. "The deal includes a small, completely independent apartment at the back of the property where you and Kiara could live. It would be close to Theo's school, which would make it easier for them to be friends, and you would have more free time and better conditions to perhaps resume your studies, if you wish." The offer was too tempting to be real. Helena felt a mixture of hope and distrust growing inside her. And her mother? What does she think of all this? Raphael's expression darkened slightly. "Mom will have to adapt. This is my home, my life, and my decisions. She always knew this day would come when I would finally move on." "What if she doesn't adapt?" Helena insisted. "What if she continues to treat me like an enemy? What if she tries to sabotage my work or poison Theo against me?" "Then she'll have to find another place to live," Raphael replied with a firmness that surprised Helena. "I love my mother, but I won't let her destroy the chance at happiness I've finally found." The conviction in his voice was palpable, and Helena found herself believing him, trusting in his determination. Still, there was another important issue to consider. "And what about us?" she asked in a low voice. "This attraction we feel, what happens if I become your employee, living on your property?" Raphael leaned across the table, his face now very close to hers. "Helena, the title of governess is just a transition, a temporary arrangement while we get to know each other better, while you feel more secure in the situation. What I truly desire, what I hope to build with you over time, is something much deeper and more meaningful than a professional relationship." His words sent a wave of heat through Helena's entire body. It was all so fast, so intense, and yet somehow so inexplicably, so right. "I need to think," he finally said. "I need to consider what's best for Chiara, for me, for all of us. I can't just—" It was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass in the room, followed by Chiara's frightened crying. They both immediately got up and ran to the room, where they found the girl in tears and Theo with a guilty expression next to the music box, now lying on the floor with the broken glass. "It was an accident," explained Theo, looking like he was about to cry as well. "I just wanted to see the ballerina up close." Helena immediately knelt beside Chiara, checking to see if she hadn't cut herself. "It's all right, my love. It was just an accident. The box can be fixed." "But the ballerina broke," sobbed Chiara, pointing to the small figure that had separated from its base. Raphael also knelt down, carefully examining the small box. "It's not as bad as it looks," he said optimistically. "I know a place that fixes this kind of thing. It'll be as good as new, I promise." Chiara looked at him hopefully through her tears. "Do you really promise?" "Lawyer's word," Raphael replied solemnly, making an X over the heart, which brought a small smile to the girl's face. The rest of the morning passed without further incident. Raphael placed the broken box in a small box, promising to take it for repair that same day. When they finally said goodbye, Theo made Chiara promise that they would see each other again soon. At the door, Raphael leaned in and whispered in Helena's ear, "Think about my proposal. There's no rush, but there's also no reason to postpone the happiness we can find together." After they left, Helena sat on the sofa, her heart and mind in turmoil. Raphael's offer was generous, a chance to significantly improve her living conditions and opportunities for Chiara, but it also meant a huge leap of faith, an emotional risk she wasn't sure she was prepared for. "Mom, do you like Theo's dad?" Chiara asked suddenly, surprising Helena with her childlike insight. "Why are you asking that, dear?" "Because you smile differently when he's near," the girl replied simply, "like in princess stories." Helena couldn't help but laugh at the comparison. "Life isn't a fairy tale, Chiara." "But it could be," the girl insisted, with the irrefutable logic of children. "Theo's father has a castle, and he looks at you the way a prince looks at a princess in books." With that surprisingly insightful observation, Chiara went back to playing with her doll, leaving Helena to contemplate whether, perhaps, life really could offer second chances, even for someone who had given up on fairy tales long ago. 2 weeks later, Helena was packing her few belongings into cardboard boxes. She had finally accepted Raphael's proposal, albeit with certain conditions. She insisted on maintaining her independence, making it clear that the apartment at the back of the property would be exclusively hers and Chiara's, where Raphael would only enter when invited. She also requested a formal contract specifying her duties and salary, ensuring that everything would be handled professionally, at least initially. "Are you sure you're not forgetting anything?" asked Viola, the neighbor from apartment 2B, who always looked after Chiara when Helena was at work. The 60-year-old woman was helping to pack the kitchen utensils, an ambiguous expression on her wrinkled face. "I think everything's here," Helena replied, sealing a box with tape. "We don't have that much stuff." "I'm not talking about objects," Viola retorted, lowering her voice so that Chiara, who was playing in the room, wouldn't hear her. "I'm talking about this sudden change. Helena, you know this man as your boss, not as, well, whatever he's becoming to you." Helena sighed, sitting down for a moment. Viola had been like a mother to her ever since she moved into that building 5 years earlier. Her concern was understandable. "I know it seems hasty," Helena admitted, "but it's an opportunity I can't refuse. Chiara will have her own room, access to a better education, more security, and I'll be able to save practically my entire salary, maybe even go back to school. Viola observed her with discerning eyes. And the lawyer? What role does he play in all this? Helena felt her face grow hot. Raphael has been very generous and respectful. He understands that I need time, that Chiara comes first. Rich men aren't used to waiting for what they want, Viola warned, and their mothers can be snakes when it comes to protecting what they consider their territory. Agnes and I will never be best friends, Helena agreed with a wry smile. But this is a professional arrangement, Viola. I'll be living on the property, but in a separate space with an independent entrance. And if it doesn't work out, I can always come back. Viola didn't seem convinced, but she nodded, respecting her friend's decision. Just promise you'll keep me informed, and that you'll bring Chiara to visit me from time to time. I promise, Helena assured her, embracing the elderly woman affectionately. On moving day, Raphael personally arrived with a small van to transport Helena and Chiara's belongings. He had insisted on hiring professionals, but Helena had refused, preferring to keep the process simple and discreet. Is that all? Raphael asked, observing the few boxes and suitcases that constituted the belongings of mother and daughter. Yes, Helena replied, somewhat embarrassed by the simplicity of her belongings compared to the luxury he was accustomed to. We've never been ones to accumulate things. That's admirable, Raphael said sincerely. My house is crammed with things we hardly ever use. The drive to the Allianz mansion was silent, with Chiara asleep in the back seat, exhausted after the excitement of the move. Helena gazed out the window, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach as they approached their new home. She's nervous, Raphael observed, not asking a question but stating a fact. A little, Helena admitted. It's a big change. It'll be all right, he assured her, briefly taking one hand off the steering wheel to squeeze hers. I promise. The apartment at the back of the property exceeded all of Helena's expectations. Completely renovated and furnished with understated elegance, the two-bedroom space was larger and more comfortable than anywhere she had ever lived. A small balcony overlooked the garden, with a partial view of the pool, while the independent access ensured the privacy she so valued. Raphael, this is amazing, said Helena, amazed as they toured the rooms. Chiara had already run to the room that would be hers, exclaiming with joy upon discovering a small bookcase full of children's books and a toy chest. That's exactly what you and Chiara deserve, Raphael replied, observing her reaction with evident satisfaction. I made some adjustments after she accepted the proposal. I hope you don't mind. The adaptations included a small office equipped with a computer and bookshelves for when she decides to resume her studies, according to Raphael, and a complete kitchen that would allow Helena and Chiara to have their meals at home whenever they wanted. I thought of everything so that they feel comfortable and independent, Raphael explained. The idea is that this is their home, not an extension of mine. The consideration shown in every detail deeply moved Helena. It was as if Raphael had anticipated all her concerns and found solutions before she even expressed them. Thank you, she said simply, feeling that any other word would be inadequate to express her gratitude. Don't thank me yet, Raphael replied with an enigmatic smile. Wait until you try the job. Theo can be quite picky about his breakfast cereal. The joke broke the tension of the moment, and Helena laughed, feeling some of her anxiety dissipate. Perhaps, just perhaps, this radical change really was the best decision. Adapting to the new routine was smoother than Helena had anticipated. As a housekeeper, her responsibilities were significantly different from those she had as a domestic worker. Now she supervised a small team of employees: Marco, the gardener; Anna, the cook who had replaced Rose, who had retired due to health issues; and Luca, a friendly young man who acted as driver and handyman. Chiara quickly adapted to her new life. Raphael had enrolled her in the same private school Theo attended, a decision that initially made Helena uncomfortable because of the cost, but which she accepted upon realizing how much it meant to her daughter. The children went to and from school together, driven by the ever-reliable Luca, and spent their afternoons playing in the mansion's extensive gardens or doing their homework in the large library. As expected, Agnes had not taken the change well. In the first few days she barely spoke to Helena, treating her with a glacial courtesy that barely disguised her resentment. With Chiara, however, surprisingly, the old woman maintained a cautious neutrality, never being rude to the girl, although she also did not show the affection she had for her grandson. It was on a February afternoon, almost a month after the move, that the first major test of the new family dynamic occurred. Raphael had announced that he would throw a small party to celebrate Theo's 9th birthday. The event, although described as small, seemed to grow larger each day, with Agnes constantly adding names to the guest list. "We can't leave out the Salons, Raphael," she insisted during breakfast. "Their position in the community is important for their business." Raphael sighed, glancing apologetically at Helena, who was discreetly serving coffee. "Mom, we've already talked about this. I want a children's party, not a social event to impress potential clients." "And since when can't you combine business with pleasure?" Agnes retorted. "Besides, the Salons have a son the same age as Theo. Pietro studied with him last year, remember?" The mention of the boy's name made Theo frown over his cereal. "Pietro was picking on me, Grandma. He's not my friend." Agnes ignored her grandson's comment. "Children have temporary disagreements. I'm sure they'll get along now." Helena remained silent during these discussions, although internally she agreed with Raphael and Theo. A children's party should be planned with the child's happiness in mind, not the family's social connections. In the end, as in many other situations, Agnes got what she wanted. The small gathering turned into an event for almost 50 people, including children and adults, scheduled to take place in the mansion's large garden the following Saturday. On the eve of the party, Helena worked tirelessly, coordinating the final preparations, checking the superhero-themed decorations, the only request of Theo's that Raphael had managed to keep, and reviewing the buffet with Anna. "The chocolate pastries need to be darker," Agnes instructed, inspecting the tray the cook had just prepared. "Fiona Muller will be there, and she always raves about the pastries her French chef makes. We can't be outdone." "Yes, ma'am," Anna replied patiently, though she cast an exasperated glance at Helena when Agnes turned her back. As night fell, exhausted after a full day of preparations, Helena finally returned to her apartment, where Chiara awaited her under the care of Luca, who had kindly offered to look after the girl while Helena worked. "How did she behave?" Helena asked, finding the two of them engrossed in a complex block construction in the middle of the room. "An angel, as always," Luca replied with his easy smile. "We're building the perfect mansion, aren't we, Chiara?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. "With a giant room just for toys and a swimming pool on the roof." Helena laughed, feeling the tension of the day dissipate before her daughter's childlike imagination. "That sounds wonderful, but now it's bath time, young lady. Tomorrow will be a busy day." After Luca said goodbye and Chiara finally fell asleep, Helena allowed herself a rare moment of relaxation with a glass of wine on the balcony. The garden, partially visible from there, was beautifully decorated for the party the following day, with colorful lights strung around the trees and strategically placed white tents. "Can I join you?" Raphael's voice startled her. He was standing beside the balcony, having evidently approached through the garden instead of using the main entrance. "Of course," Helena replied, trying to ignore the leap her heart had made when she saw him. Raphael climbed the few steps and sat in the chair next to her, accepting the glass of wine she offered. "Sorry to show up like this without warning. I saw the lights were on and thought maybe you were having trouble relaxing too." "Lots of last-minute details going through my head," Helena admitted. "I want everything to be perfect for Theo tomorrow." Raphael smiled, that smile that always seemed to light up his eyes in a special way. "You've dedicated yourself to this party as much as I have, and even more than my mother, although she pretends otherwise." They remained silent for a few minutes, appreciating the quiet of the night and the distant glow of the city lights. There was a comfortable intimacy between them now, built over weeks of daily interaction, small conversations, and smiles exchanged in stolen moments. "Helena," Raphael said finally, his voice more serious, "there's something I need to tell you before the party tomorrow." The serious tone immediately put Helena on alert. "What is it? Is there a problem?" "My aunt Fiona will be there," he explained. "She's my father's sister, and I haven't had much contact with her since Anna's funeral. She and my mother have always been close, and I'm afraid Mom may have shared with her disapproval of her presence in our lives. Helena felt a tightness in her chest. Another obstacle, another person to judge her, to question her presence in Raphael and Theo's lives. "I understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I should prepare myself for more hostility then." Raphael took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "I don't want you to worry about it. Fiona may have old-fashioned opinions, but this is my home, and you and Chiara are part of it now. I just thought I should be prepared, in case she makes any inappropriate comments." The genuine concern in his voice touched Helena deeply. Over the past month, Raphael had repeatedly proven himself a man of his word, defending her against Agnes's petty provocations, always ensuring that she and Chiara felt welcome and valued. "Thank you for letting me know," Helena said, squeezing his hand lightly. "Don't worry. I know how to deal with difficult people. I've had plenty of practice with your mother." Raphael chuckled softly, the sound comforting in the stillness of the night. "You are an extraordinary woman, Helena. I knew that from day one, but each passing day only confirms what I saw in you." The compliment warmed her inside, momentarily pushing away her worries about the next day. For a fleeting instant, Helena allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to surrender completely to the feelings growing between them, without reservations, without fear of the past or the future. "I'm happy here," he confessed softly. "Happier than I've allowed myself to be in a long time." Raphael leaned in slowly, his eyes fixed on hers, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. But Helena didn't pull back. When their lips finally met, it was as if an electric current ran through her body, awakening sensations long dormant. The kiss was gentle and brief, almost hesitant, like a silent question. When they parted, Raphael kept his face close to hers, their foreheads almost touching. "I've wanted to do this ever since the day I found you crying in the rain with Chiara," he murmured. Helena smiled, feeling a mixture of happiness and vulnerability that made her dizzy. "That day I was a mess, not very attractive." "You've never looked more beautiful," Raphael retorted. "Your strength, your dignity, even in the most difficult moment, that's when I knew there was something special about you." They remained like that for a few moments, suspended in a moment of perfect harmony, until a noise inside the apartment brought them back to reality. "Mommy!" called Chiara's sleepy voice. Helena quickly turned away, the enchantment of the moment broken by the reality of her responsibilities. "I need to go see what she wants." Raphael nodded, understanding as always. "Of course. Tomorrow will be a long day. You both need to rest." As he stood to leave, Helena stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. "Raphael, I'm also happy that we're building this, whatever it is, together." The smile that lit up his face was worth more than 1,000 words. With one last kiss, quicker than the first, Raphael descended the steps of the veranda and disappeared into the darkness of the garden, leaving Helena with a light and hopeful heart for the first time in many years. Little did she know that the party the following day would bring a far more difficult test than she had imagined for her newfound happiness. The day of Theo's party dawned perfectly, as if specially ordered for the occasion. The sun shone in an intense blue sky, the mild temperature ideal for an outdoor celebration. Helena woke up before her alarm, the anxiety of the big day already pulsing through her veins. She found Chiara already awake, sitting on the bed meticulously arranging the outfit she would wear to the party, a light blue dress that Helena had bought especially for the occasion. "Do you think I'll look pretty, Mummy?" the girl asked, running her hand over the fabric reverently. "The prettiest of them all," Helena assured, sitting down next to her daughter. "But remember, today is Theo's birthday, so he'll be the center of attention." Chiara nodded solemnly. "I know. I made a special card for him yesterday with Uncle Luca. It's drying in the living room." After a quick breakfast, Helena and Chiara headed to the main house. The mansion was buzzing with activity. Staff hired especially for the event were setting up the last tables under the white tents, while others were inflating colorful balloons and hanging banners with a superhero theme. Agnes watched everything with a critical eye, elegantly dressed in a navy blue outfit that had certainly cost more than Helena's monthly salary. Seeing them approaching, she forced a tense smile. "Helena, finally." The cake delivery guys arrived, but they insist there's a mistake in the order. Something about the frosting flavor being different from what was requested. "Could you check? I'm busy setting the tables." Good morning to you too, Mrs. Agnes, Helena replied politely, refusing to be fazed by the lack of cordiality. I'll take care of it immediately. Come on, Chiara. The girl, however, remained where she was, looking curiously at Agnes. Your dress is very pretty, Mrs. Agnes, she commented innocently. It looks like a princess's dress. The spontaneity of the compliment seemed to briefly distract the elderly woman, whose face softened for a moment. Thank you, Chiara. Your dress is also appropriate for the occasion. Helena considered this the closest thing to a compliment Agnes could offer, and with a small nod of thanks, led Chiara into the kitchen, where the cake mix-up was being sorted out. The morning passed in a whirlwind of final adjustments and preparations. Raphael was busy with Theo, helping him get dressed and distracting him so he wouldn't see the garden's transformation ahead of time. Helena barely had time to exchange a few words with him, only quick smiles and meaningful glances when their paths occasionally crossed. Around noon, the first guests began to arrive. Excited children ran to the garden, where hired monitors were already organizing the first games. Elegantly dressed parents gathered in small groups, chatting and watching their children from afar. Helena kept busy, checking that everything was going according to plan, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. Chiara had joined the other children, quickly befriending a girl with long brown hair, who Helena later discovered was the daughter of the Carmen family, important clients of Raphael's law firm. It was when the guests numbered around 30 that a black limousine pulled up to the entrance of the mansion. Helena watched from afar as Agnes immediately interrupted her conversation with another couple and hurried to greet the newcomers. A tall, slender woman with impeccably styled grey hair in a severe bun, accompanied by a younger man carrying several wrapped packages. "Fiona, darling, how wonderful that you could come," exclaimed Agnes, embracing the taller woman with evident enthusiasm. Helena felt a chill. So this was the famous Aunt Fiona, Raphael's father's sister, who, according to him, shared Agnes's disapproval of her presence in the house. Instinctively, she stepped back a little, preferring to observe from a distance as the two older women entered the house, followed by the man with the packages. It wasn't long before Raphael appeared, leading Theo to the center of the garden, where a large table had been set for the cake and presents. The boy was radiant in his custom-made superhero costume, smiling broadly as everyone sang "Happy Birthday." Helena watched the scene with a smile, genuinely happy for Theo's evident joy. That's when she felt someone stop beside her. "So, you're Helena." The cold, assessing voice made Helena turn around. Fiona Muller was observing her with penetrating eyes, examining her from head to toe like someone evaluating an object for sale. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Helena, the housekeeper," she replied, maintaining her composure. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Fiona raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Governess? Interesting. Agnes gave me the impression that her role in this house was more complex." The suggestive tone left no doubt as to what the woman really meant. Helena felt her face flush, but maintained a neutral expression. "My job here is to take care of the organization of the house and Theo's well-being," she replied simply. "Like you're doing today, making sure his party is perfect." Fiona smiled, a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, and this arrangement includes an apartment at the back of the property, as I understand it. Quite generous of my nephew." Before Helena could answer, they were interrupted by Chiara, who ran towards her holding a piece of cake. "Mom, look! Theo gave me the first piece because he said I'm his best friend," exclaimed the girl, proudly showing off the cake with blue frosting. Fiona looked from Chiara to Helena, her expression now revealing clear disapproval. "I understand. So this is the real reason for the arrangement. An attempt to create a surrogate family." The cruel insinuation hit Helena like a slap. She protectively placed her hand on Chiara's shoulder, who looked at the two women in confusion, sensing the tension but not understanding its origin. "Chiara, why don't you go show your cake to Mrs. Agnes? I'm sure she'll be happy to see how pleased you are," suggested Helena, wanting to remove her daughter from the uncomfortable situation. Reluctantly, the girl obeyed, walking away towards Agnes, who was chatting with other ladies near the drinks table. "My daughter has nothing to do with the professional arrangements between Raphael and me," Helena said firmly, once Chiara was out of earshot. "And I would appreciate it if you kept such insinuations away from her." Fiona smiled again, seeming almost pleased with the reaction she had provoked. "Oh, don't be offended, dear. I'm just observing what's before my eyes. Raphael has always been a lonely man since he lost Anna. It's understandable that he seeks comfort. I just wonder if you understand your position in this dynamic." "My position," Helena repeated slowly, "is that of a respected professional who does her job with dignity. Nothing more, nothing less." "If that's what you say," Fiona replied with an elegant shrug, "just remember, men like Raphael don't marry women like you. They might have fun. They might even grow fond of each other, but in the end they go back to their own world. It's the natural order of things." With those cutting words, Fiona walked away, leaving Helena stunned and hurt. The cruel words had touched on insecurities she had tried to ignore, the social difference between her and Raphael, the distinct worlds they came from, the obstacles they would face if they truly decided to deepen the relationship that was only beginning to blossom between them. Taking a deep breath to regain her composure, Helena turned her attention back to the tasks of the party. She wouldn't give Fiona the satisfaction of seeing her upset. She focused on ensuring that everything continued to run smoothly, that the children were having fun, and that the adults had their needs met. It was during one of these strolls through the garden that she noticed Raphael conversing intensely with Fiona and Agnes in a more secluded corner. The body language of the three indicated a heated discussion. Agnes gestured emphatically, Fiona maintained her rigid but intimidating posture, and Raphael ran his hand through his hair repeatedly, a gesture that Helena had already identified as a sign of his stress. She deliberately avoided getting closer, not wanting to fuel more gossip or create uncomfortable situations. However, she couldn't help but notice the glances the trio occasionally cast in her direction, confirming her suspicions that she was the subject of their heated conversation. The afternoon wore on, and the party was beginning to show signs of drawing to a close soon. Some families were already saying goodbye, exhausted but happy children being led away by equally tired parents. Helena was helping to organize Theo's presence when she felt a hand on her shoulder. "Can we talk in private?" Raphael asked, his expression more serious than Helena would have liked to see on a day of celebration. "Of course," she agreed, her heart racing with apprehension. "I just need to finish—" "I'll take care of it," interrupted Luca, who had approached silently. "Go ahead. I have everything under control here." With a silent thank you, Helena followed Raphael into the house, away from the curious eyes of the remaining guests. He led her to his office, a room Helena rarely frequented in her daily duties. "What happened?" she asked as soon as the door closed behind them. "You seem worried." Raphael sighed heavily, sitting on the edge of his desk. "Fiona is complicating things. She threatened to tell all our mutual acquaintances about our arrangement, as she calls it. She implied it would be detrimental to my reputation in the legal field, that conservative clients might not approve." Helena felt her stomach sink. "I understand. She approached me earlier and made it quite clear what she thinks about my presence here." "What did she say to you?" Raphael asked, immediately on alert. Helena hesitated, reluctant to repeat the cruel words. "Nothing I haven't already thought to myself in my moments of doubt. That I come from a different world than yours. That all of this is temporary." Raphael's expression hardened. "This is ridiculous. She knows nothing about us, about what we're building." "And what are we building, Raphael?" Helena asked softly. "We need to be honest. This is complicated. Your mother hates me, your aunt thinks I'm an opportunist, and even if we ignore all that, there's still the fact that you're my boss. The difference between us is—" "The difference between us," Raphael interrupted, stepping closer and holding her hands, "is irrelevant compared to what we feel. I don't care what Fiona or anyone else thinks. I only care about you, about Chiara, about the happiness we've found together." The sincerity in his voice was touching, and Helena felt tears welling up in her eyes. "But your career, your social standing, I can't be responsible for jeopardizing all of that." "You won't be," he assured her. "I'm a good lawyer, Helena. People seek me out for my professional competence, not my personal life. And any client who thinks differently is not someone I want to work with anyway." Helena wanted to believe him. She wanted to surrender completely to the hope his words awakened. But years of disappointments and hardships had taught her to be cautious, to protect her heart and, above all, to protect Chiara. "Perhaps we should slow down," he suggested, though every word stung. Take a step back. Keep things strictly professional for now until the dust settles. Raphael looked devastated. Is this what you want? To ignore what's growing between us because of Fiona's empty threats? It's not what I want, Helena admitted. It's what I think is most prudent, at least until... They were interrupted by an urgent knock on the door, followed by Luca's abrupt entrance, his normally calm face now contorted with worry. Excuse the interruption, he said quickly, but I think you need to come immediately. Mrs. Fiona is, well, she's causing a scene in the garden with Chiara. Helena's blood ran cold. Without waiting for further explanations, she rushed out of the office, closely followed by Raphael. Upon reaching the garden, they found a scene that made Helena's stomach churn. Chiara was in the center of a circle of attentive adults, openly crying, while Fiona leaned over her, gripping her arm with unnecessary force. That's certainly not appropriate behavior for a party of this caliber, Fiona said loudly. Well-mannered children know that you don't pick up food with your hands at social events. Let go of my daughter, Helena's voice cut through the air like a whip. Now. Fiona looked up, her cold eyes meeting Helena's. Slowly, deliberately, she released Chiara's arm, who immediately ran to her mother, sobbing. Just trying to teach some basic principles of etiquette, Fiona said with feigned sweetness. Something that seems to be lacking in her upbringing. Raphael stood beside Helena, his anger evident in every tense line of his body. Aunt Fiona, you've crossed all the lines. I ask that you leave my house immediately. A murmur ran through the remaining guests, who now watched the confrontation with barely disguised curiosity. Agnes, who was nearby, seemed torn between shock and a strange unease. Raphael, don't be dramatic, Fiona interjected, casually adjusting the sleeve of her expensive coat. I was simply expressing concern about the girl's inappropriate behavior. After all, if she's going to frequent the same places as Theo, certain standards should be maintained. The only inappropriate behavior here is yours, Raphael retorted, his voice controlled but sharp. Intimidating a child, humiliating them publicly, that's unacceptable at any level of the society you so highly value. Fiona narrowed her eyes, all pretense of civility abandoned. I see she already has her claws deeply sunk into you. Poor Anna must be turning in her grave to see her husband and son being manipulated like this. The blow was low, calculated to hurt, and from Raphael's almost imperceptible shudder, Helena knew she had hit her target. But before he could respond, an unexpected voice spoke up. That's enough, Fiona. Everyone turned, surprised, to Agnes, who had taken a step forward, her face pale but determined. You've gone too far, the old woman continued, her voice trembling but firm. This is my son's house, and you're disrespecting all of us with your behavior. The shock on Fiona's face would have been almost comical under other circumstances. Agnes, you can't be serious. After everything you've told me, all your worries... My concerns, Agnes interrupted, do not justify cruelty against an innocent child, nor do they give you the right to invoke Anna's name to harm my son. Helena watched the scene in disbelief, hardly believing that Agnes, of all people, was defending her. Beside her, Chiara had stopped crying and looked at the old woman with curiosity mixed with lingering fear. Fiona seemed momentarily speechless, looking from Agnes to Raphael and finally to Helena, who was still embracing Chiara protectively. I see I was misled about this family's feelings, she said finally, regaining some of her composure. If you prefer this kind of association, Raphael, then I have nothing more to say. Just don't come looking for me when this inevitably ends in disaster. With those words, she turned on her heels and headed for the exit, hurriedly followed by the man accompanying her, who seemed mortified by the whole situation. A heavy silence fell over the garden after her departure. The few remaining guests began to disperse, murmuring apologies and hurried farewells. Helena felt exposed, vulnerable, as if she had been stripped naked in public. More than that, she felt furious that Chiara had been involved and humiliated. I think I'll take Chiara home, she said to Raphael in a low voice. She's had enough excitement for one day. Raphael nodded, concern evident in his eyes. I understand. I'll finish saying goodbye to the guests and then I'll go see them, if everything is all right. Helena hesitated, still too shaken to make decisions. After everything that had happened, the idea of backing down, of putting distance between herself and Raphael, as she had suggested minutes before, seemed even more urgent. But at the same time, the way he had defended her, how he had stood up to his own family for her and Chiara, awakened in her heart a gratitude and affection that could not be denied. "All right," he finally agreed. "We'll be waiting." As she walked away with Chiara, Helena noticed Agnes standing alone near the now empty table of gifts. The elderly woman seemed somehow smaller, more frail, as if the confrontation with Fiona had drained her strength. For a brief moment their eyes met, and Helena saw something unexpected in Agnes's gaze. Not the usual disdain or resentment, but a kind of resignation mixed with something that almost seemed respect. Whatever was happening, one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same after that day. For better or for worse, the confrontation had precipitated a fundamental shift in the household's dynamics, and Helena knew she would need all her strength to navigate the uncharted waters that lay before her. In the small apartment at the back of the mansion, Helena gently cradled Chiara, trying to soothe the last sobs that still shook the little girl's body. The girl, exhausted by the whirlwind of emotions, had finally fallen asleep in her arms, her cheeks still damp with tears. Carefully, Helena laid her on the bed and covered her with her favorite blanket, gently stroking her hair before leaving the room. In the living room, Helena collapsed onto the sofa, her body suddenly heavy with the physical and emotional exhaustion of the day. Fiona's cruel words still echoed in her mind, mingling with the image of Chiara crying, humiliated in front of everyone. But there was also Agnes's surprising intervention, an unexpected gesture that Helena was still trying to understand. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. When he opened it, he found not only Raphael, as he had expected, but also Agnes, standing a little behind her son with an expression that was difficult to decipher. "Can we come in?" Raphael asked, his concern evident on his face. "We need to talk, the three of us." Helena hesitated for only a second before stepping aside, allowing them to enter. Agnes's presence in her personal space was disconcerting, especially considering their history. The elderly woman looked around curiously, observing the simple yet cozy details of the apartment, the photos of Chiara on the walls, the books neatly arranged on the shelves, the fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table. "Please have a seat," Helena invited, indicating the sofa while she herself took a seat in a nearby armchair. Chiara just fell asleep. It was an intense day for her. "How is she?" Raphael asked, genuine concern in his voice. "Shaken, but she'll be okay," Helena replied. "Children have incredible resilience. She'll probably be more recovered tomorrow." An uncomfortable silence followed, with the three adults avoiding eye contact. It was Agnes who finally broke it, much to Helena's surprise. "I came to apologize," said the old woman, the words seeming almost torn from her. "Not for what Fiona did today. She is responsible for her own actions, but for my role in all of this. It was my resentment that fueled her hostility. I told her things I shouldn't have said." Helena observed the older woman, searching for signs of deceit or manipulation in her words, but what she saw was only a tired old woman, her shoulders slumped under the weight of her own mistakes. "Why now?" Helena asked directly. "What has changed?" Agnes sighed, running her hand over the neckline of her elegant dress, smoothing imaginary wrinkles. "Seeing that child crying, her daughter, it reminded me of Raphael when he was little. He also cried like that when he felt wronged." She paused, as if searching for the right words, and I realized in that moment that I had become exactly the kind of person I always despised. Someone who hurts innocent children to achieve her goals. Raphael looked at his mother with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "Mom, I appreciate the gesture, but more than an apology is needed after everything that happened. Helena and Chiara deserve genuine respect, not just temporary remorse." Agnes nodded slowly. "I know. And I don't expect an apology to erase months of hostility, but it's a start. A start that I'm willing to turn into concrete actions if given the chance." Helena felt conflicted. Part of her wanted to believe in the older woman's sincerity, to see this moment as an opportunity for healing and reconciliation. Another part, more cautious, remembered all the small cruelties, the disdainful glances, the cutting words whispered when Raphael wasn't around. "Mrs. Agnes," she finally said, keeping her voice controlled, "I appreciate your apologies and especially your intervention today, but I need you to understand, my priority is Chiara. It always will be. and I cannot allow her to grow up in an environment where she is treated as inferior or unwanted." "I understand," Agnes replied, surprising Helena once again, "and I admire your attitude. You are a good mother, Helena, better than I was in many ways." The unexpected admission fell like a stone into the silence of the room. Raphael looked at his mother as if he were seeing her for the first time, while Helena tried to process the deeper meaning of those words.